You know what I can't fucking stand is people with kids that act like everyone in the world should just bend over backwards and cater to them because they're like, I don't know, saints for raising the next generation. And before y'all freak out in my comments, I'm not talking about all parents, okay? There's plenty of you that I fuck with. I'm talking about PTA Polly with a superiority complex. Like, you know the one. So I work in sales in a high-end luxury showroom, and yesterday this family comes in, 2 parents, their kids. And in our showroom, we have these swivel chairs off to the side for people to like hang out. Now, if you've ever been a kid, you know that swivel chairs are like crack to a 6-year-old. Like, it's just one big upholstered carnival ride. So inevitably, the kids find their way over there. So I'm working with the parents. Kids are spinning, living their best life. And at one point, Dad looks over and he kind of chuckles along with the kids as they're having fun. And so I make a joke that we only have those to entertain the kids. So the dad turns to me and he's like, well, we were just in another showroom, and even though it wasn't kid-friendly, they brought out wood blocks for them to play with. And I'm like, okay. So not 10 seconds later, one of the kids falls out of the chair and like bumps his leg. Nothing big, he's not crying, just like a little boo-boo. Dad rushes over like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? And the kid's like, oh, I hurt my leg. This man channels the audacity of 1,000 years of patriarchy and looks at me and says, this is why you should have wood blocks. And if that's not enough, he then turns to his snot weasel and says, you could be playing and building. Excuse me, sir. First of all, this is a high-end showroom, not a fucking Chuck E. Cheese, okay? Entertaining your sticky little hobgoblin is not part of my job description. I do not remember signing up for the Babysitters Club. And second of all, no one asked you to reproduce, okay? There are already 8 billion people on this planet, which in my opinion is 8 billion too many, okay? If you choose to parent a child, you have to actually parent that child. If you see your kid spinning on a piece of furniture and you think that it's dangerous, it is your responsibility to tell them to stop. If you see them spinning and you don't give a fuck, it is your fault if they get hurt. Nowhere in this situation does it involve me. So for you to even imply that your kid somehow got hurt because I wasn't providing ample entertainment is bullshit. Take the money that you were going to spend here and get the kid a fucking iPad. It may rot his brain, but it'll keep him out of the emergency room and your entitlement out of my fucking aura.
This right here. So here's the setting. It's 2019. It's the week before Thanksgiving. I'm getting on my plane to go home for the holidays to see my family. Now, some backstory. I chose this flight because my brother could pick me up at this time. It was somewhat cheap, and it gave me a window seat because I don't like flying alone, and I think window seats are really relaxing for me. I board the plane near the end, so everyone else is pretty much already sat down. I get to my row, and I see to the right, there is a mother and her son in my row. And so she's blocking me from walking in with her tray. And so I walk up to her, I go, hey, this is my row. I have the window seat, seat F. I was like, I just need to get by in order to sit down. This woman grabs my forearm and she says, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. It's really nice to meet you. I was just wondering if you don't mind switching with me so that my son can have the window seat. You can have this aisle seat. And I look at her, I go, oh, it's nice to meet you too. I was like, I really want the window seat. I actually picked this particular flight because it gave me a window seat and it's a direct flight. It's only 87 minutes long. So no thank you, but no thank you. She then looks at me and she says, it's in your best interest to give my son the window seat. He's only ever flown twice before, once with a window seat, once without a window seat. And trust me, you don't want to experience this without a window seat. I didn't even know what to say at this point. I just said no thank you. She then proceeds to grab my forearm with her other arm and says, I'm trying to be reasonable. You are a grown man. He is a little boy. You can sit on the aisle for 90 minutes. Let my son have the window seat or I'm going to get the flight attendant. I look at her. I look at my forearm. And I say the reasonable thing would have been, if your son needed a window seat, you should have secured him a window seat. You booked a flight with assigned seating, and now you're asking me at the last minute to switch? I booked this seat because I wanted a window seat. If you want to ask someone else to switch, you totally can, but I'm not switching with you, and the flight attendant is not going to tell me to get out of my assigned seat, which I purchased, because you want me to move. She then proceeds to get the flight attendant, not letting me into my row. And the flight attendant then agrees with me. So she starts yelling at the flight attendant. Then she yells at the couple behind me that, oh my gosh, can you believe blah, blah, blah airlines won't let a little boy have a window seat? This is absolutely ridiculous. We're leaving. We're not even going to be on this flight anymore. This is absolutely ridiculous. The flight attendant says if she would like to switch flights, they're more than happy to do so, but there would be an upcharge for that. She didn't switch flights. I eventually was able to sit down in my seat, and the first thing I did was shut that window. The flight was interesting too. Oh, God.
So this one particular night, my deaf friend and I went out to eat at an all-you-can-eat restaurant. It was a Friday evening, and this restaurant was pretty crowded. I mean, the tables were really close to each other, and the seats were pretty much back to back. So we walked in, we waited to be seated, and my friend and I were seated at a table. Not a booth, but at a table. So we went to go get our food, we sat down, and I'd say we were there for about 15 minutes, and then a family of 4 were sat behind us, a mother, father, and their 2 children. They sat behind us. Now, behind me was one of their kids, and the kid kept pushing the seat up against mine, bumping it. The mother turned to me and asked me if I wouldn't mind pushing my seat up a little bit more towards the table. And I told her that there wasn't any room. I mean, I had a belly that was about 12 months pregnant. The mother again asked me to move because her son needs more room to sit. And again, I told her that I'm not able to. There was not a lot of room. And she was telling me that if I don't, I'm going to regret it because her son is going to throw a temper tantrum. And then she said, well, why don't you move to the other side of the table and have a chat with your friend? And again, I told her that there's no room. I'm not doing it. I ignored him. I noticed that the father was getting embarrassed and buried his face in his hands. Finally, the manager noticed the commotion, came up to us and asked her what's going on. So I started to say, and then the mother interrupted me saying that this rude customer refuses to move the chair up to give her son more room at the table. In the meantime, this son keeps hitting my table, and I asked him to stop. Finally, the manager turns to us and asked me to switch seats to the other side of the table. I told him that my friend and I are signing that we needed to sit on opposite ends of the table. And the manager said, well, why don't you just sit and talk to your friend instead of flapping your hands? Oh, my deaf friend got mad and just bawled him out. I told him to calm down, don't worry about it. So then the manager then turned to the family and said, I'll take care of it, and ended up rearranging the tables behind them so they can give the family more room. The parents still weren't happy. Well, anyway, my friend and I, we were done. I paid for our meal, and to make matters worse, I ended up paying for the family's meal, about $60. So my friend and I, we sat in the car and watched this family walk out of the restaurant. Oh, they were mad, saying, how dare they pay for our food? What do they think we are, poor? I thought, yeah, entitled parents, go sit on it. Love y'all.
When I worked in bookshops, people would just leave their kids and then fuck off to other shops all the time. Like, they treated us like free childcare. And here's the thing, if we had parents come in who were really flustered and like panicky and were like, can I leave my kid here for 10 minutes? We would be like, that's fine, but we'd need their information. Because that's fine. We're taking on responsibility. When you leave your kid there, anyone can take it. I'll assume it's their parents. You haven't made yourself known to me. You've sneakily snuck your child in. Anyway, this one kid, she got a paper cut. She came up to us. We gave her a plaster. We asked her where her parents were. She was like, oh, mummy's gone to the shop. Mummy was at the shops for fucking half an hour. And if you work in retail customer service, you know there's a certain amount of time you have before you have to call the police and declare it's child neglect. The woman came back, we explained this to her, and instead of being like, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, she started having a go at us because her kid had a paper cut. Why weren't you watching her? It's your job. No, actually, it's not. My job is to sell fucking books. Yours is to look after your child.
Yes, I am right there with you, Sonny Jim. It's like they are the default and everybody else is doing something wrong. So it's like you have music playing at 10 p.m. and they're like, excuse me, can you turn that down? My child is trying to sleep. Meanwhile, their child is screaming at 6 a.m. and you say, excuse me, shut that fucking thing up. And they're like, oh, it's just a child, as if it's any better than having music at 10 p.m. If it's just a child, put a fucking muzzle on it, you know? If you can't muzzle your child, then you should muzzle your bloody genitals or you'll be speaking to me in a tank.
Okay, so in 2018, me and my boyfriend booked a trip to Disneyland because we'd never been as adults. He'd actually never been. I'd only been when I was like 6 or 7, so I don't really remember it. We pulled all our savings to do this trip, because we didn't have much money, but we really wanted to do it. It was like our last trip before we saved to move out. So yeah, it was like our once in a lifetime kind of trip to do Disneyland. And as I said, we'd never been before, like, as adults, so it was all new to us. We were very excited. So on the first day we went, we saw the parade, but we were right at the back, so we had a really bad view. I think we had to, like, stand on some pillars and stuff. So we had a really shit view, and we really wanted to see it, like, in person, because it was a special one for the time. I can't remember, it was, like, 25th anniversary or something. It was a really cool parade. We really wanted to see it and, like, experience it fully. So the next day, about an hour before the parade started, we decided to get there early so that we could make sure we were at the front. So we didn't go on any rides for an hour. We didn't do, like, anything else. And obviously that was our choice. We wanted to prioritize being at the front for the parade because we knew when it was going to start so that we could be at the front. And that was our choice. So 20 minutes before the parade starts, it starts filling up on Main Street. Like, there's lots of people, and we are luckily at the front because that's where we wanted to be. Then literally, as the parade is starting, I get a big tap on my shoulder like this, very, very aggressively. And it was a French woman. And I turn around because I'm like, why is someone touching me? Weird. And she goes, you need to move so you can let my kids be at the front because they really want to see the parade. And yeah, she was kind of like, can you move so that they can stand in front of you? They won't block your view. I was like, you're right, they won't block my view if they go in front of me. But the pavement is chock-a-block. Everyone's like pushing forward as they do when the parade starts. If I try and move whatsoever, I'm going to fall into the pavement. I'm going to fall off of the pavement into the road. And when that happens, when someone like loses their spot, the cast members escort you round to the back because they don't want you on the pavement when the parade's going because it's dangerous. So I was like, I'm not going to move because I risk, if I try and let your kid in front of me, I risk trying to lose my spot. I also didn't want a kid in front of me because I wanted to be at the front. That was the whole point that we decided to not go on any rides so we could be at the front of the parade. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, let my kid in front of you. They're going to block your view anyway. Like, just do it anyway. And I was like, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to risk losing my spot next to my boyfriend and also risk being thrown off the pavement. Like, it's not happening. I'm sorry. And she got really pissed off at me. She ended up, like, holding her kid up behind me. So the kid could still see it was fine. They just weren't directly at the front. And luckily, they did that because on that specific parade, the Christoph actor came up to me and gave me a huge hug. And it was really wholesome and really cute. And I cried. And that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't at the front. So, fuck you, French woman. I'm sorry, but I'm not moving for your child. It's not my fault I don't have kids.
So I was initially going to stitch this out of costume, but then I thought, you know what, I'm recording as Mary Poppins today. I may as well just stitch this as Mary Poppins, at least in the costume, because it's highly ironic considering the story I'm about to tell. So I've been a kids entertainer since 2014, but I've been a Disney princess impersonator at kids parties for the last 7 years, which I've recently retired from doing because, not gonna lie, your girl's a little bit sick of it now. But back in 2018, I had a weekend where I had back-to-back aerial parties one morning, like literally two 2-hour parties, one after the other. But then in the afternoon, I was invited as a guest to a friend's birthday barbecue. So I finished my aerial parties and then went to this friend's birthday barbecue just as myself, like I said, invited as a guest. I was not entertaining, I was not dressed as a princess, I was literally going as myself. And obviously it was a friend's birthday, so there were a lot of Prosecco and Pimm's, and I was getting very merry. I was getting very, very drunk. So I'm at this birthday barbecue just chatting to my friends, and then this woman approaches me and she comes and sits next to me. She taps me on the shoulder and she goes, "Oh, you're Georgia, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, hello, stranger, nice to meet you." Now, I should probably point out that at this birthday barbecue, obviously there were a couple of children there, just kind of running amok, having fun in the garden. Like I said, it was a beautiful sunny day, so the parents were just getting merry whilst their kids were running around. And this woman goes, "Oh, that's my daughter over there." And I went, "Okay, that's nice." She then said, "You're a kids entertainer, aren't you? That's what they've just told me, you're a kids entertainer." And I had a sudden feeling that I knew exactly what she was going to ask me, but I said, "Yes, I am. I actually had 2 parties this morning, funnily enough." She then says, "Oh, the kids are really, really bored. Do you think you could just, like, run a party game for them or, like, entertain them just for a bit, just so they're out of our hair for a couple of hours, you know?" And like I said, I'd been at this birthday barbecue for a little while. I'd been drinking a lot of Prosecco and Pimm's. I hadn't eaten anything yet. I was very, very drunk at this point. And I politely, but slightly bluntly, just kind of turned to her and went, "Are you going to pay me?" Obviously, I said it laughing, but she just looked at me like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And I continued to kindly explain to her that, you know, it was my time off. I was invited as a guest. And, you know, unless she was going to pay me some money, I was not going to take time out of my celebration of my friend's birthday to entertain children that aren't mine, that, you know, I have no interest in, to be honest, at this point. Like I said, had a whole morning of kids' parties and I just didn't really want to be around kids at that point. And of course, this woman did not like my answer very much. She then went and complained about me to absolutely everybody at this party. But you know what? I had to set some boundaries. You know, unless she was going to pay me money, I was not going to entertain the kids. You know, I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong in the comments if you want, but I personally, it was a personal choice to say no. And you know what? I don't regret it. I had a great time.
This TikTok literally reminds me of something that happened to me. I was in the cinema and I was waiting at the ice cream counter because I wanted ice cream, right? So there's like a queue and we're all queuing in an orderly fashion, like functioning members of society. And you queue at one end of the ice cream counter and then you like move up towards the other end, which is next to the till, and then you like pay and then you go about your business. So we're there, I'm waiting in the queue for like 10-15 minutes, like a functional member of society, and there's this woman and her 2 kids and they come at the opposite end of the counter, and I just didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, they're just like looking at the ice cream flavors, which is fine. Didn't really care. And then it came to my turn to get my ice cream. So the woman like basically interjects the worker asking like, oh, what do you want? And she's like, oh, we want this and we want that, whatever. So I politely look at her and I'm just like, oh, excuse me, there's like a queue because there's people behind me, we've all been waiting. And she goes to me like, oh, we just want one thing. And I was like, okay, but there's a queue, like, can you like join the queue? Like, it's literally my turn. And she was like, my 12-year-old kid like just wants one thing. And I'm just like, okay, but there's a queue. And she just was like, oh, so you're really gonna make a 12-year-old join the back of the queue for ice cream? And I'm like, yes. And you know what the thing is like, just the type of person I am, if she came up to me and she was like, oh, I'm really, really sorry, I know there's a queue, but like we're really running behind in the movie, like do you mind if we just get one scoop? I would have been like, yeah, that's fine, like go ahead, like not a big deal. But it's just the fact that she literally looked me dead in my eyes and was like, so you're gonna make a 12-year-old join the back of the queue? It just blew my mind, because it's like, why do you think you're exempt from joining a queue? Like, we're all queuing to get ice cream because we've all got movies we want to watch. And I just don't understand why she felt that because she had a 12-year-old that meant like she was exempt from queuing. And it's like, this is literally what you're teaching your child. Like, your child is nearly a teenager and you're literally teaching your child that it's literally okay to like jump ahead of people, and that society should like bend over backwards for your child, and that none of the rules apply to them. Like, why would you teach your child that? I literally have a nephew the same age as this child, and I couldn't even imagine any situation where I would think that it would be okay for my nephew to jump the queue because they're a child. Not even a small child, they're 12 years old. That's nearly a teenager. And I just cannot even believe that people literally think that normal civilians should bend over backwards for their bratty little children. Tell your child that they need to join the queue like every other person, because that is how a functioning society works. And the fact that you're even arguing with me because I'm saying, hey, you're jumping ahead of me, is literally ridiculous. Like, just, oh.